where to begin. How about...
Dispenser going up.
How many times have you heard that to begin a story? Let's do something else. I got it. Here we go. Here's how to open a movie.
Intruder alert! Red spies in the base.
Red spies in the base?
No, I don't think so. It sounds familiar, doesn't it to you? Oh, no, not the book. How many have seen opening the book before? Close the book. We're not doing that. Here's what we're gonna do.
So, let me ask you something. When you were just a kid, have you ever seen a door that you weren't allowed into, but you wanted to see what was inside? Maybe you've seen a door like this at your school, a room only the staff are allowed in. Or maybe where your parents worked, rooms they, as a part of the staff, were allowed in, but not you. Even in a supermarket like Walmart, you see the doors at the back of the store leading into their warehouse, and you maybe want to go back there and explore it. As a child, many notable memories of mine involved places like this. I've always wanted to go into these rooms and explore them. I brought up these specific examples, school, work, a supermarket, because these were the types of places where I saw this the most, and where it has most intrigued me. In school, I'd often see these big black metal doors with large warnings on them, and most of the time they'd remain shut and locked. On rare occasions, though, one of those doors would be wide open, which would cause me to stop and peer in. They were often dark, grimy utility rooms, storing supplies for janitors, or storing tables and seats for classrooms. And while they were small rooms with not much to see, I couldn't help but feel like I wanted to go inside and look around anyways. Like maybe I'd be missing a secret crevice somewhere that led into hidden tunnels. Even with special permission to see the parts of the school that were usually restricted, these rooms remained off limits. I remember one of these rooms in particular catching my eye, in a part of the school I never went to a lot. By luck, the door was open and I got a nice glimpse inside. It was similar to the others, dark, grimy, sparse lighting, but I saw something in the back that was different from the rest. There was a small, narrow metal staircase going up, somewhere. It's obvious to me now that it was roof access, but for younger me, I didn't realize that, and I was under the impression there was a hidden room, or even a hidden full level above the school, and I've always wanted to go see what was up there. Now you may be asking, how does any of this relate to TF2? What a great question. Team Fortress 2 takes place in an industrialized 1960s rural America, within the deserts of New Mexico. The industrialized setting was picked out by Moby Frankie, the original art director for this game. We see this type of setting everywhere, from the concept art to the many in-game playable maps. There's only a handful of maps in the game that don't take place in these types of locations, and whether or not they belong in the game is debatable, but that's a video for another time. The industrial settings we commonly see in this game are places we may see in our everyday lives as we drive past them. I know for sure that was the case for me, seeing massive facilities in the distance, far off the highway. Most commonly in my childhood, these places were for farming, or gravel pits. Yes, TF2 is so popular they made gravel pits in real life. Isn't that just cool?
That's a joke, lads.
This is just a small side tangent, but is it only me, or do you guys get a dopamine rush whenever you see a pile of gravel in real life? This game has conditioned me to find gravel of all things entertaining, and now whenever I see it anywhere, I point at it and tell everyone around me, hey, it's a TF2 reference! I may or may not need help. But anyways, back to the topic. As I was saying, you may have seen these industrial locations in your life, usually somewhere in the distance as you drove past them. And just like wanting to see what is behind a door you aren't allowed in, you may want to explore these places just as much, and they are just as equally out of bounds. Team Fortress 2, however, puts you right in the heart of these places, where you get to see the ins and outs of the facilities. In the early development of the game, Valve put a lot of care into their map design, adding many intricate details to not only make you believe that these are real lived-in locations where people work, but to also tell a story. Before I continue, let's look at some of these details and give them some appreciation. For this, we'll head to 2-4, the most popular map in the game. Starting with the spawn room, we can see this is like a temporary locker room for the mercenaries to gear up in before heading out into battle. They have a shelf where they keep their personal belongings, among other things. The benches have equipment on or under them, stuff that gets used pretty regularly. Among this, we also see the resupply cabinet with a jar on it, a mop and bucket, this target paper, and a scale. Outside of the main battlegrounds, we can see a lot of great details. Boxes, tires, barrels, and other random junk are scattered around. We can see the difference in how the two teams operate. Red's base is more old school, with the barn design, and they deliver and ship their cargo using small trucks. These tires probably need to be replaced often, which is probably why there are a lot of them. On the other hand, Blue's base is a lot bigger and more organized. We can see that a train runs through here, although it's currently halted due to the war. But interestingly, it seems like someone has left the engine on. Instead of tires, we see a lot of train wheels. The upkeep of this train is probably important for their business. On the other side, we can see a little yard with giant pipes, lumber, and boxes, as well as 2 loaded rail cars ready to be transported. If we take a look at the courtyard of both bases, Red's operation seems to be more about farming. We can see these Happy Farmers Cooperative logos about. There's some hay, and a few sacks that say Red Bread. Interestingly, there are some wooden cow cutouts that play cow noises every so often. Perhaps to trick any visitors into believing there are real cows here. As we know from the comics, the citizens of the town of Twofort are lead poisoned, and are incredibly stupid. There's another red truck here pulling into the area, perhaps to this garage, so that it can be repaired and have an oil change. Blue's courtyard seems to have a larger scale operation. We can see a factory in the background behind the shed, and one of the rare blue trucks we don't see very often. Up here we can see piles of gravel among more buildings and some big machinery. This is probably where they process the gravel until it's eventually loaded onto the train. One of the coolest details I love on this map is the area right before the narrow tunnels that lead down into the intelligence room. On the right we can see this small office where 2 people sit at this desk. On the table we can see 2 phones. Any normal person might assume there is one for each employee, but this detail actually hints at something a lot cooler. To give the shortest explanation, back in the early days of phone, it wasn't very easy to call internationally. Most people didn't need to because they probably didn't know anyone who lived outside the country. Big businesses, though, often were international and needed to have phone lines connecting them to the countries that they operated in. This would have also been used to make arrangements and deals with foreign corporations. The solution would be to have 2 phones, usually in the office of someone important. One phone would be for regular calls, local calls, and the other was used specifically for international calling. I can imagine 2 people sitting at this desk. Security guards observing anyone who went in or out, making sure they had the proper clearance to go down into the intelligence room. If someone unauthorized got by, or there was a breach of security, they might need to make a call to their boss. I can imagine Redmond or Blutark being out of the country for multiple reasons, from vacations to business trips, and they would need to have a way to be contacted if there was an emergency. These are the kinds of details that really show you how much thought went into the design of these maps back in the early days of the game. A lot of newer maps aren't as jam-packed with details, but I can't blame the creators. But as long as the details they do add are consistent with the setting and established lore of the game, it'll probably be a successful map in my eyes. Now back to the main topic. Each map's industrial setting is often a front to a hidden operation underneath, and usually only serves as a cover-up and or side business that helps fund the ongoing gravel wars. Usually these big industrial operations hide secret underground bases with spying equipment, rockets, death rays, or intelligence. I can only imagine how I would have felt if my younger self got to explore these places I wasn't allowed into, just to find a big secret base, or hidden conspiracy unfolding. Even finding out that the room was bigger than it looked would be interesting to me. Another one of my memories from my childhood comes from where my dad worked years ago. He was a maintenance and repair guy for a neighborhood of townhouses, and sometimes when I was out of school, I'd get to go with him for his workday. On rare occasions, he'd have to go to the neighborhood pool to take care of something, and I'd go with him to see what he was doing. There was a utility room inside the building next to the pool that stored a lot of random junk and equipment. But there was also a door that led into a room that I was not allowed to go in, which at the time confused me, since I thought my dad working there meant that I'd be allowed to go any place that he was allowed in. Inside this room were 4 big round tanks and a lot of thick pipes. I always remember distinctly seeing my dad stand inside that room, and me wishing I could see more of it. The image of him standing in that room through the door was always a powerful one to me. It felt like it represented a fear I had, but I can't for sure say what that fear is. Later I realized that this room was where the pool's filter pumps were, and that's where those round tanks were. And thinking about this memory a lot made me realize something. These kinds of locations are what we see often playing Team Fortress 2, and would fit perfectly within their environment. and it shows to me just how much potential there is for many new maps. There's already so many of these great environments within all of these maps, but there's always so many new ideas to expand into, and it makes me excited to see every new map added. There's so much creative potential and places to take inspiration from. Another thing I find interesting about these maps is that all of them are forced to close off areas for the purposes of gameplay, and this often creates the same effect as seeing a door you want to explore. Despite the unrestricted access the mercenaries have, we still don't often see them going through the inner workings of these facilities when they otherwise could, and this often leaves you wanting more, where once you would have just loved to explore these places on the surface, now you want to go and see every room that you can. It's like when you go to a big hospital to explore the hallways, but there's just so many rooms you aren't allowed in, and you wish you could see all of them. Sometimes though, you can also be left with the opposite effect. A lot of TF2 maps usually have indoor and outdoor areas, and in the outdoor areas you might see gates that restrict access into the facility, but serves as a gameplay boundary to keep you from leaving the playable space. And instead of wanting to see more of the map, you want to see what's out there beyond it. It's a feeling often unique only to video games. Most places in real life are easy to visualize the boundaries of, so you can understand what's in and around a place. It can seem mostly uninteresting, but video games rarely ever show you what's beyond the playable area, and so it can make what would normally be uninteresting, interesting. Somewhere I saw or heard that Powerhouse and Hydro were back-to-back in their physical locations. This has always been a super cool fact to me, and it should be super obvious, but it just feels like it isn't. They exist on both sides of a big hydroelectric dam, and together form one bigger facility. Imagine if we can get a version of this map that properly had both locations put together, and let you seamlessly walk between them through the connected network of pathways and buildings. Or imagine a TF2 map where every single door was considered, all containing a room, whether or not you're able to go inside. This reminds me of something I call the closed door phenomenon. Have you ever been in a place that had a door that you've never seen open before? A door that never gets used? Perhaps it even had some junk in front of it, or a shelf. I've seen this quite a lot in the schools I went to, and if you've seen this, have you ever thought about it? In your mind, these doors might not actually serve a purpose. In your head, they serve as a wall, and thus they don't exist to you. One time I got to see one of these doors open up, leading into quite an expansive closet I would have never guessed was actually there. And since then, I've always taken note of these inconspicuous doors, as they might be hiding something special. Team Fortress 2 often has these kinds of doors everywhere, and I don't just mean the doors you see that you aren't allowed into. I'm specifically talking about the many doors you don't think about in regular gameplay, such as this little break area in the 2-Fort intelligence room, or this gated tunnel on Viaduct. These are areas the game conditions you to not really think about, or even recognize that they are there. This is odd, especially with these two spots, since they are in places you can see, but in actual gameplay, it only serves as a wall with nothing of value beyond it. In real life, these places would be very easily notable, but when you're playing a game where it only serves as an inaccessible area of little importance, it's often something you don't see, and I find it neat how being in a game could change your perception of these doors. It may only just be me, but this connection between places from my memory and places in this game is fascinating to me. It's similar to liminal spaces in a way, and I'm always looking forward to seeing more of it. Sadly, I don't have anything bigger to say about these ideas. I'd love to say something important to tie them into something core to TF2, but in reality it's just a niche thing that I've thought a lot about over the years, but I'd really like you to think about it too. And that's the end of the video. Thank you for watching, and if you have the same feelings I do about this, please let me know in the comments. There was a lot of other things I wanted to say here, but this video became a big cloud of ideas, and I wanted everything I was saying to at least be somewhat consistent with each other. There's just a lot of small random things I can say about the setting of this game. This is my first full-fledged real video, and I put a lot of work into making it happen, and I have many more planned and on the way soon. If you want to be notified of that, or anything else this channel may post, please hit the subscribe button, and please let me know of any constructive criticisms that you have about this video. I'm quite new at everything I'm doing, and if you have any advice on how I can improve my future content, I'd be more than happy to give it a try. And with that, I'm out. Have a good one.